Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome to another episode of China Update, where we discuss leading political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. And first up, we continue with our ongoing coverage of the US-China trade war. The already murky outlook for US-China economic relations darkened further on yesterday, as officials in Beijing categorically denied that trade negotiations were taking place. Quote, "I would like to emphasize that currently there are no ongoing economic or trade negotiations between China and the United States," end quote, a spokesperson for China's Ministry of Commerce said, dismissing speculation about recent progress as, quote, "mere speculation and lacking factual basis," end quote. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs echoed the stance, contradicting comments from US President Donald Trump earlier the same day. Trump told reporters that talks had occurred, quote, "this morning," end quote, but offered no explanation, and no US or Chinese officials have corroborated his claim. While China's ambassador to the US, Xie Feng, reportedly visited the White House on Wednesday, sources confirmed that no breakthrough was achieved. US-based The New York Times reports that some Trump administration officials privately admit they misjudged China's response, though we note that, being the New York Times, there may be a possibility of a political bias. Trump's belief that Beijing would rush to negotiate has not materialized, the outlet writes, with China instead leveraging its own powerful toolkit of retaliatory measures which we have covered here on China Update. Elizabeth Economy, a former Commerce Department official and noted China scholar, told the New York Times that the Trump team underestimated 3 core factors: China's retaliatory capabilities, its economic leverage over the US, and Xi Jinping's skill at portraying the US as a villain. Quote, "This game of chicken has done nothing but enable Xi Jinping to boost his standing in and outside China, while the US appears uninformed and unmoored," end quote, she said. The trade war's economic costs are now visible on both sides. According to the UK-based Financial Times, Chinese factories have begun scaling back massively production and sending workers home. Han Dongfeng of the China Labour Bulletin warned that, quote, "the rearrangement of China's manufacturing sector will be a long-term process and workers will be sacrificed," end quote, suggesting that while Beijing is standing firm, it's regular working-class folks who will suffer the most. In the US, key industries are also feeling the strain. Boeing's CEO told US-based The Wall Street Journal that the company may stop making planes for Chinese carriers altogether if tariffs prevent deliveries. Quote, "We're going to work our tail off to make sure the China issue doesn't implicate our recovery," end quote, he said. Rare earths, vital to everything from smartphones to military drones, have become another flashpoint. The US-based Washington Post reports that China's curbs on rare earth exports have sent senior US officials scrambling to contain the economic shock. Ashley Zumwalt-Forbes, a former Energy Department official, noted that the US is in a severe disadvantage due to its depleted strategic stockpiles. Quote, "We sold off the bulk of those stockpiles in the 90s and early 2000s, end quote, she said, adding that the US now holds only $800 million in strategic materials, down from $50 billion during the Cold War. If that is the case, one might argue that perhaps it is good that this trade war has forced the US to reinvest in these supply chains. Better now than, for example, at the beginning of a kinetic war." The geopolitical ripple effects are global. US-based Bloomberg reports that Japan is resisting US pressure to join a trade bloc aimed at countering China. Japanese officials have stressed that while they support a rules-based trade order, they will prioritize their own economic interests and maintain ties with Beijing. Tokyo has repeatedly signaled to China that it does not fully align with Washington's export restrictions on semiconductors. Though, when push comes to shove, Tokyo has also made it clear that they will choose Washington over Beijing any day of the week. For them, however, they do not want to have to choose. Meanwhile, Australia is preparing its own strategic response. The Australian Prime Minister has pledged to create a national reserve of 31 critical minerals, aiming to reduce global reliance on China. Albanese said that the reserve could serve as leverage in further negotiations with Trump, especially after Australia was excluded from US tariff exemptions. Amid escalating tensions and conflicting narratives, one thing is clear: the fog of the US-China trade war is not lifting. It's thickening. Meanwhile, China has kicked off its first issuance of special sovereign bonds for 2025, aiming to counter the economic strain from escalating trade tensions with the United States. On Thursday, yesterday, the Ministry of Finance sold 286 billion yuan, $39 billion in special purpose bonds, part of a broader fiscal package approved in March. Unlike regular sovereign debt, these bonds are earmarked for specific uses and do not count toward China's official 4% fiscal deficit target. The issuance includes 165 billion yuan in 5-year bonds intended to recapitalize state-owned banks under pressure from weak profitability. The bonds were sold at a 1.45% yield. Also auctioned were 20 and 30-year bonds totaling 121 billion yuan, priced at 1.98% and 1.88% respectively. Demand was strong, with bid-to-cover ratios exceeding 3 times. These bonds are part of a larger plan to issue 1.3 trillion yuan in ultra-long bonds through October, surpassing 2024's quota. Proceeds will fund infrastructure, consumer goods purchases, and industrial upgrades. Despite increased debt supply, bond markets remain stable, supported by expectations of further monetary easing. Analysts say the People's Bank of China may cut rates or reserve requirements to maintain liquidity and support growth amid these 145% and higher US tariffs. We will continue following this trade war, part of the wider Cold War between the US and China, closely going forward. If you want to be on top of all updates related to China and this new US-China competition as we move into what is fast becoming a very changing global landscape, make sure you're subscribed to China Update, hit the bell notification icon, and you will be. If you're enjoying today's episode of China Update, don't forget the like button. And for those who want to help keep China Update financially sustainable, I am a one-man band and independent YouTube channel. I rely primarily on subscriber support. Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are in the description below. Thank you so much. Let's continue. E-commerce giant JD.com has officially entered China's booming food delivery market, launching its new platform JD Takeout in major cities like Beijing and Shanghai. The move signals a direct challenge to Meituan, the current leader in local services. On the 21st of April, JD released an open letter to its food delivery riders, promising fair treatment, capped profit margins, and job opportunities, immediately setting a combative tone in what some are calling China's next big platform war. The company said it would cap JD Takeout's profit margin at no more than 5% and will add 100,000 delivery riders nationwide to support the platform's growth. JD's founder, Richard Liu, even joined in by delivering orders himself, making headlines and bolstering publicity for the launch. In response to reports that a rival platform, widely assumed to be Meituan, had barred riders from handling JD orders, JD pledged to ensure those affected would not suffer income losses and even offered to arrange work for their partners. Quote, JD will never force riders to choose only one platform, end quote, the company stated, adding, quote, they are free to take orders from multiple services to maximize their earnings, end quote. The company also emphasized improved labor protections, promising formal contracts and comprehensive social security for new full-time riders. However, many riders remain skeptical. Interviews conducted by state-run The Paper revealed concerns not about social security, but about the systemic issues within delivery platforms, such as inflexible algorithms, harsh penalties, and rigid delivery times. While JD's promises are ambitious, success will hinge on whether it can deliver better conditions for riders and a competitive user experience, something Meituan has spent years refining. The battle for China's over 1 billion consumers has officially begun. It is nice to note, however, that in a nation that is nominally communist, it is free market competition that is resulting potentially in better working conditions for workers. Coffee time. Not bad. But as we move on to our final story, we will find that not all workers are treated alike. Dong Mingzhu, the influential chairwoman of Gree Electric Appliances, has ignited a storm of debate after declaring that the company will not hire overseas returnees, citing concerns about espionage. Quote, we absolutely do not hire returnees. We only cultivate our own talents from domestic universities, end quote, Dong said during a recent shareholders meeting, adding, quote, there are spies among the returnees, and I don't know who is and who isn't, end quote. The The returnees here are referring to Chinese who have studied or worked overseas and are now returning to China. Her remarks, made during the company's April 22nd board re-election meeting, where she was reappointed as chairwoman, have drawn widespread criticism for their sweeping generalization. Dong defended her position by emphasizing the company's focus on developing talent with youthful, innovative mindsets from within China's educational system. The comments come at a time when China's official stance on returnee talent appears to diverge sharply. The People's Liberation Army Academy of Military Sciences recently announced a new recruitment initiative explicitly targeting graduates from top-ranked international universities. Applicants from QS World University Rankings top 200 institutions, especially those with backgrounds in artificial intelligence, materials science, aerospace, and related fields, are being encouraged to apply for roles in national defense and strategic research. The military's recruitment drive even includes a pathway for those students to become officers. The military likely recognizes that the top universities in the world are not in China but overseas, and that one would be shooting oneself in the foot if they were to deny such talent pathways to employment. Perhaps a more cynical observer might say that it should be these Western universities, not Chinese companies, being concerned about espionage. Nevertheless, the contrasting signals highlight a broader tension within China over how to handle returnee talent. While national defense bodies seek to leverage overseas expertise for technological advancement, concerns over foreign influence and loyalty continue to shape attitudes in the private sector. Dong's remarks also reflect growing anxieties in China's business elite about geopolitical risks, particularly amid heightened scrutiny of Chinese scientists abroad and tightening US visa policies. As China pushes forward in global tech and innovation, the debate over trust, talent, and national security is unlikely to fade. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching. There may be an episode tomorrow. Have a good Friday, have a restful weekend, and I will either see you tomorrow or for a new week on Monday.